This is Nuance with Nikki, the nitty gritty, even if it's shitty. My name is Nikki, and over here we have difficult conversations, often of an adult nature, speaking about horrors. But I've noticed lately that my followership is largely male. I tend to have more males than females on this channel. And to all the men and boys out there supporting me and watching me and listening to me, judging or not, that's cool. You're entitled to your own opinions. I just wanted to say thank you for the support. So this one is dedicated to the boys, the men, and particularly the fatherless son or anybody with daddy issues. We all go through that. We all, and there are multiple reasons. And one of those reasons is that as a world, we have learned to put too much pressure on dads. We really have. And when there are good men at the moment, we are putting too little of a spotlight on the good men. And I don't know. Okay, there's a lot. Okay, we're focusing on the positivity. Let's just go with that. So I want to play you. Okay, what you're looking at now is just videos of dads just randomly saving their kids, and just like how they can defy physics. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But as this is primarily for the fatherless child, I'm going to play you some poems or play you some stuff from movies, just random little things that have actually fathered me. And so I hope that they will be a blessing to you to watch. Okay, so give me just a second, boys, gents, and gentlefolk. My gents, that's what we call it in South Africa. My gents, my brews. Nikki, you don't have a brain fart. There we go. Okay, so please listen to this dad giving his son advice. It's awesome.
Why are you going to Namibia?
I just put my finger on a map.
When you have sex with a woman, be gentle and listen to her. Treat her with respect and dignity, even if you don't love her.
I know.
Always tell the truth. Always take the high road.
I know.
Live each day like it could be your last. Drink it in. Be adventurous, be bold, but savor it. Goes fast.
I know.
Don't die.
I won't.
What's the best part of that? Don't die.
Drink it in. When you have sex with...
Just in case the volume wasn't good, I don't know how good the volume is on this display capture thing. I'm just going to reiterate it, okay? It's worth repeating.
a woman, be gentle and listen to her.
He said, when you have sex with a woman, be gentle and listen to her.
Treat her with respect and dignity, even if you don't love her.
Treat her with respect and dignity, even if you don't love her.
I know.
Always tell the truth.
Always tell the truth.
Always take the high road.
Always take the high road.
I know.
Live each day like it could be your last.
Live each day like it could be your last.
Drink it in.
Drink it in.
Be adventurous, be bold.
Be adventurous, be bold.
But savor it. Goes fast.
But savory, I think he said. It goes fast.
I know.
Don't die.
Don't die.
I won't.
Lies. Okay, and of course, he was on his way to Namibia, a beautiful country that you see part of my country, South Africa. It's on the southwest tip of Africa. Alrighty then, what else have I got for you, my brews? I'm just looking for it, okay? This is a poem that has encouraged me. It is actually dedicated to men in general. Let me just make sure that my gevriet... Oh, I can't make sure that my gevriet is not in front of it. And I will play you the audio of it, okay? I love this reading of it. This is dedicated to my student Warren.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truths you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
I know that there is a deep yearning in the hearts of every man to be the best man that he can, and I know that they feel often that they don't have good examples, even when those good examples are right in front of them. So obviously I've got to put my men first. This is dedicated to the men in my country, the colored men, who are often only portrayed as gangsters, never portrayed for their gentle and resourceful side. I do encourage you to go and learn more about them and how they overcome their challenges. I mean, these are the kind of men that will go into the middle of gang fights while there is gunfire and interrupt. Okay, so just have a second, just look at this.
For a family member, so hence with a million people give 895, then I mean we have fed a million people for that particular month, that particular season. So my encouragement is to people, you know, if you have 895, you sponsor 895.
So this uncle over here,
that particular season. So my encouragement is to people, you know, if you have 895.
Uncle has organized a feeding scheme for a community that gets very little support and help for R8.95. That is less than 50 American cents or 50 British p. Okay. And so he's able to use a poor community to donate so that they can feed a poor community themselves. And these are the people that are often seen as gangsters and that kind of thing, and their courage is never ever spoken about. Moving forward, another poem. This one I'm going to dedicate to a king who, a genuine, like, as in blue blood royal, who you may or may not have heard about depending on where in the world you come from, okay? Might help if you press play, Nikki.
There will always be something to do, my boy. There will always be wrongs to right. There will always be need for a manly breed and men unafraid to fight. There will always be honor to guard, my boy. There will always be hills to climb, and tasks to do, and battles new, from now till the end of time. There will always be dangers to face, my boy. There will always be goals to take, and men shall be tired when the roads divide, and proved by the choice they make. There will always be burdens to bear, my boy. There will always be need to pray. There will always be tears through the future years as loved ones are borne away. There will always be God to serve, my boy, and always the flag above. They shall call to you until life is through for courage and strength and love. So these are the things I dream, my boy, and have dreamed since your life began. That whatever befalls when the old world calls, it shall find you a sturdy man.
So while that is some encouragement to be tough and to be strong, I just want to let you know I see you. Many of you are tougher and stronger than people give you credit for, and they don't even realize until after you are dead. So I just wanted to say thank you for your strength. I also wanted to say that you don't always have to be strong. I know that sometimes you're afraid. I know that sometimes you're overwhelmed. I know that sometimes you don't know what to do. And that before you are a man, you're a human being too. And it's okay to feel like that. It doesn't make you less of a man. It makes you more of a human being. It shows your resilience and your strength, which is not just something physical, but the biggest kind of bravery is facing that which is in you. Do you know what I mean? Give me just a second. Something just occurred to me. Gents, I'm so glad this occurred to me while speaking about you being warriors. I mean, life is complex, and this isn't a pretty world, you know? And so we're going to look at a piece here of a man who was out fighting for king and country when he had to face possibly the worst fear that a man ever could face, the worst grief that a man ever could face. And in that moment of grief, he says words so wise and so profound that I think it's important for every man to hear once in his life. As an example, check it out.
My ever gentle cousin stands Scotland where it did.
At last, poor country. It's almost afraid to know itself. It cannot be called our mother, but our graves.
What's our news, grief?
Let not your ears despise my tongue forever, which shall possess them with the heaviest sound that ever yet they heard.
How does my wife?
You're castless surprised. Your wife and babes savagely slaughtered.
What man? What man? My children do.
Wife, children, servants, all that could be found.
He has no children! All my pretty chickens and their dam. In one fell swoop.
Dispute it like a man.
Oh, I will do so. But I will also feel it as a man.
Dispute it like a man, oh, I will do so. But I will also feel it as a man. Now, just in case I will get copyrighted for this, which I completely understand and do anticipate, what I would like to do is just get the text out. And for those who may not be good with Shakespearean language, I would like to translate it into modern day English. I do need you to give me some patience with that. Right, so as promised, just in case I get copyrighted or just in case the sound doesn't work, and also just making provision for the fact that some may not understand Shakespearean language or English may not be their first language, I will play it again this time but silent. And so this is MacDuff, and he's getting news from Ross about his family. And he's out there fighting to get his country back. He's doing what he believes is his duty as a man, as a warrior, an incredibly brave warrior. Spoiler alert, he does win the battle at the end. And so he's asking as he gets news, stands Scotland where it did? In other words, is Scotland, their country, where it was the last time he got news? And the guy says, there, alas, poor country, almost afraid to know itself. It cannot be called our mother, but our grave. And so, yeah, basically, the gist of that is the country is not their mother, but their grave. Okay? What happens next is he asks how's his wife, and his friend says to him, let not your ears despise my tongue forever, which shall possess them with the heaviest sound that ever they heard. In other words, please don't hate me for saying this, but this is the heaviest thing you're ever going to hear another person say. And he tells him, your castle, look at how they're afraid to look at him, right? And they said, your castle is surprised, your wives and babes savagely slaughtered. And he goes, merciful heaven, what man? Who did that, you know? And basically, they know exactly who it is. They know exactly who it is. It is Macbeth. And he goes, my children too. And the guy says, wife, children, servants, all that could be found. And he goes, and I must be from thence. So my wife killed too. So in other words, he's like, while I wasn't home, my wife, my kids, my servants, anybody that could be found were murdered. Okay, and then, so there's a gut-wrenching scream. And he says, be comforted. Let us make us medicines of our great revenge to cure this deadly grief. In the meantime, MacDuff screams, he has no children. Oh, my pretty ones, oh, my hellcat, all my pretty chickens and their dam means their mother, at one fell swoop. In other words, with one shot, they're all killed. And then he says, disputed like a man. In other words, stand up like a man, fight against this, you know. And the words of wisdom that I most love from this moment is when MacDuff says, oh, I shall do so. And he has a long pause. And he says, but I must feel it as a man. This is not a weak man. He says, I must feel it as a man. And he gives vent to all of his feelings. He truly, really, really does. He doesn't shy away from the grief, but he braves it, you know. And no one can argue that he's not a warrior. He absolutely is. And in the end, spoiler alert, I mean, he does slay the man who did that to his family. So I just felt that I should point that out. I hadn't planned to do so, but I felt it's important. Okay, and we're going to learn more from Shakespeare in a minute. Again, these are all my favorite things in art about being a man, and I was hoping that if you hadn't heard at least one or two of them, that they might be helpful or insightful to you. You see, often men have been put into impossible circumstances, trying to do what's right against the grain. And what then happens is that they lose everything. So let us look at a story from real life now of a warrior and see how he has, and he's from my country, let's see how he handles a difficult situation.
The political and military advisors and the defeated and exiled king of the Zulus. He came with one aim in mind. He wanted his kingdom back.
Your Majesty, His Highness Cetshwayo Kampande Zulu.
So what he said there to Queen Victoria was Ndlovukazi. That means elephant queen. The elephant is the most glorious animal in Africa. It is an animal that not even the lions can take on. And the Zulu men referred to themselves as Amabubesi, or Ingonya. So if you've ever heard Nansingonya Babagiti Babo in the Nguni languages, Nguni is an umbrella term, much like the word Celtic, and there are many cultures from that stem from it. An umbrella term like Roman. We have many languages that stem from it. And so it's a huge way of paying her respect. All right, just to give you guys some cultural context.
Ndlovukazi, siyawubonga umusa wendlovukazi yabamhlophe. Sifisa ukwakha ubuhlobo obunomphelo.
His Highness thanks Her Imperial Majesty for the kind way he has been received in Great Britain. He hopes he is here, he says, to seal that pact of friendship once and for all.
Okay, I just wanted to give you a translation there, but note how as a matter of principle, and many Zulu men do it today, and we all have varying opinions about it, it's controversial, but they insist, even in the face of a language which is dominant, such as English, which has erased many languages around the world, on speaking in their own language.
Your Majesty, the Colonial Office feels that any act of clemency would be a grave miscalculation of the Zulu threat. Ma'am, gentlemen, we're not merely concerned here today with a dispute over territorial borders or the revendications of a defeated king. We are called upon to defend Africa. It is, I believe, our sovereign duty, ma'am, to bring peace to this land that has for the past 60 years been devastated by one of the most formidable military empires ever created, the empire of Shaka Zulu, here represented by his legitimate heir, King Cetshwayo. Professor Bramston.
So, Shaka Zulu there, a formidable king that they're going to explain right now. The man that you saw earlier was his son, King Cetshwayo. And so the Zulu kingdom was eventually defeated, but make no mistake, these are people who went into a gun battle with knives and won the first time they went into it. And they went down standing, and I'd like you to see that.
From 1816 to 1828, most definitely one of the greatest military geniuses in history. Certainly on the level of a Caesar or an Alexander the Great. Imagine, if you will, the prodigious feat accomplished by this 19th century African Achilles, Shaka Zulu. In less than 12 years, he transformed a handful of idyllic, relatively harmless herdsmen, who were by nature reluctant to engage in any form of warfare, into a Spartan army of over 80,000 highly trained, ruthless warriors, extending his influence over most of Southeast Africa. An empire compatible in extension and might to that of Napoleon, and in treachery to that of Genghis Khan. Your Majesty, gentlemen, the war machine created by Shaka Zulu was so monolithic, it has survived his death by almost half a century. Yes, the crown has now defeated it, but that defeat is purely temporary. It can and will rise again and again if we do not stop it once and for all. And why? Because King Shaka was no ordinary mortal. He was a messiah, a god figure. Like an African Mephistopheles, he gave the Zulus glory in return for their souls, wielding the forces of life and death on an endless battlefield of blood and carnage. Your Majesty.
Ma'am, the threat is real, and the decision before us clear. Therefore, the Colonial Office suggests that we constitute within the Zulu Kingdom a progressive destruction and dislocation of the military and economic system. In so doing, we feel that the Zulu people, deprived of central leadership, will revert to the state of innocuous bliss that they enjoyed before the insane conditioning of Shaka.
I tend to agree with Kimberly. If the Zulus won't bend, break them and be done with it. That's what I say.
I rather think we'll be doing them a favor. A return to the plough should prove to be most therapeutic for these savages. might even bless them with a hint of civilization.
Have I meant to translate, my lords?
That won't be necessary, sir. We have so little in common, especially our concepts of human respect.
And as such, King Cetshwayo then outclasses them. Of course, this was a time in which many people mistook infrastructure for civilization, and he just absolutely answers them with so much grace and dignity. That was manliness on a different level. I stand in awe. I made a bold claim earlier that the Zulu men walked into a battle, a gunfight with knives, and won. I wish to demonstrate that to you, so don't take my word for it. A song by Juluka and Johnny Clegg, Le Zulu Blanche, the White Zulu, a hero of our nation, who insisted on growing up around Zulu boys. The police always used to take him away from them. But listen to the words of his song. Try and listen to these lyrics. I trust I won't be copyrighted because I've played the song before. I also trust I won't be copyrighted for the last thing I showed you. Do try and catch the lyrics.
Hopeless battalion, destined to die, broken by the benders of kings. Vainglorious general, Victorian pride, would cost him and 800 men their lives. Impi, Onansi Pieza, Obani Bematita.
Impi Onansi Pieza, Ubani Be Batinta Mabubesi. War, it's time for war. Who dares to touch the lions?
They came to the side of a mountain. Scouts rode out to spy the land. Even as the round soldiers lay resting, MacGyver's forces were soon at hand. And by the evening, the vultures were wheeling above the ruins where the fallen lay. An ancient song, as old as the ashes, echoed as MacGyver's warriors marched away.
This is still pretty much a common war cry across all cultures in South Africa. Just give me a minute, because my country's so filled with brave men, men to look up to, that I just want to take a moment to honor them. And please stick around for the best advice from literature that I have for you on men. That'll be near the end of this video. Please give me a second. Thank you so much. So as this is a video for men, I've decided to honor my fatherland, Greece, before I honor my motherland, South Africa. I do a lot for her. Please listen to these words, and I will show you the South African parallel of that from my motherland.
Come and take them. This is probably one of the most famous warrior responses in history to anything. This is what King Leonides, the Spartan king, said to the Persian king, King Xerxes, at the Battle of Thermopylae, when Xerxes demanded that the Spartans lay down their arms. Leonidas' response was 2 words in Greek, molon labe, come and take them.
Okay, so what he's saying there is that the most powerful king in the world then told the Spartans, listen here, lay down your weapons. And of course, the man out of whose balls I swam, I hope, said, oh, buddy, you want the weapons? He said to them, buddy, come and get them. Oh! Every time. But that is not the only man from whom I am descendant that said that. I want to tell you about a man from my country, from a very small race group up against you know what? Let me let a man from my country tell you. This is a beautiful story. Kom haal me. It means come and get me. Okay.
Anton Franche was born and raised in Pontyville in the Cape Flats. Anton was loved and respected by many who knew him. because of his kind heart in always putting other people first, and also because of his fearlessness at such a young age. After being inspired by Ashley Creel, Anton would go on to become one of the greatest freedom fighters to have come from the Cape Flats.
Can I stop there? Do you notice how all the men I've shown you actually started as kind men, but when their back was against the wall, they had to call on the warrior in them? And so kindness, sirs, is not the opposite of warriorness. What I'm seeing here, and what these stories teach me at least, is that your capacity for one deepens your capacity for the other. That is what I'm observing as an outsider looking in, as a woman observing men.
That's a fact. In seeing the hardship and struggle of his people, he developed a ferocious appetite for politics, and he would mobilize thousands of young people in Cape Town's fight against apartheid. At the age of just 17, this young colored man from Modderdam High would go on to receive specialist military training in Angola and prove himself to be a gifted leader and MK guerrilla soldier that the apartheid special forces would never forget. On the 17th of November 1989, while living in a rented room in Athlone, the secret police surrounded the house where Anton was in. The police took up positions on every side of the house, cut down bushes, and ensured they had a clear line of sight to the young colored man that was so revered that they would need a small army to take him out. Just after midnight, they attempted to enter the home.
My boy, one man needed a small army. Let's hear what happened.
But quickly retreated, having only removed the Noordin family who also lived in the house. You see, Anton wanted to ensure that the family was safe, as he knew that this fight was his fight for them and all his people that were still oppressed. Anton had no intention of surrendering, and it may have been for two reasons. Firstly, he knew they would probably kill him in detention like they killed his hero Ashley Creel only 2 years earlier, who was also from Bonteville. And secondly, he may be tortured to the point where...
Shout out to Ashley Creel, because all I'm going to say is the gunshot on his chest was bigger than the gunshot in his shirt. They claim that he attacked them, which implies that he was close to them, right? But if the gunshot on his shirt was smaller, that means that they lifted up his shirt to shoot it bigger to falsify evidence. Okay, but you're going to hear about a generation of men, a group of men from Bonteheuwel, Cape Town, about which you may never have heard, who were so brave that even when they were tortured, these men stood firm. These men stood firm, and they would never give up their friends. Unfortunately, Anton was given up by one of his friends, but that guy was the exception, not the rule, and they're still very angry with him. I make no judgments. I'm about to show you men from across cultures in my country, and I make no judgments about what people did in difficult circumstances. I know being a man's not easy.
Earlier, who was also from Bonteville. And secondly, he may be tortured to the point where under that excruciating duress, they may do everything to get him to betray his comrades, which is exactly how they received information of his location in Athlone. So, armed with only a pistol and an AK-47, while surrounded by about 40 heavily armed policemen, Anton van die Bontas waited for them to make their move. The apartheid police attempted to convince Anton to surrender. But following his defiance, at 12:30 a.m., they opened fire. And as expected, this young colored man, who believed in the liberation of his people and all South Africans, fired back. And he fired back hard. This would continue for several hours. And after about 7 hours of trying to kill this young activist, the only way that 40 men could stop one man was with a bomb. A grenade was thrown into the room where Anton was, and the battle for Athlone was over. This young colored superhero that Marvel never gave us said something in the midst of that battle that should inspire every young person today who's facing adversity or anything else. He laughed at them and said, "Ko haal my as julle kan." When the police tried to get him to give up and even shouted to him, which showed their true intentions,
he said to them, "Come fetch me if you can." Our boy went down standing.
"Kom uit jou vark, vandag gaan jy vrek." What Anton would reply became the hallmark of his resilient spirit. His one reply is a war cry to you and me.
Yeah, they said to him, "Come out, you pig. Today, you're going to die the death of an animal.
Frick. What Anton would reply became the hallmark of his resilient spirit. His one reply is a war cry to you and me, that when you are faced with injustice, when you are faced with hardship, when you are faced with sickness, when you are faced with a global pandemic, when you are faced with the biggest storm in your life, when you are faced with people that don't know you but want to talk cack about you, when you are faced with people that want to cancel you as if they were the ones that gave birth to you, as if they went through what you went through, and even when you are faced with death, don't run, don't give up, don't fear, don't lose hope, but just like Anton that stood there, Manalin, know who you are, know what you're fighting for, and let them know, go haume as julle kan. The saddest part of Anton's story, and so many other young colored activists that history and even our own government forgot, is that young colored men today have guns in their hands to destroy and take away the lives of other colored people. But our true heroes had guns in their hands, handcuffs on their wrists, fists in the air, and the African soil on their graves to uplift, empower, and liberate their people. So on this Youth Day, ek sê dankie Anton. Ons staan vas.
Yeah, folks. So I think what I've demonstrated to you is that most men in my country, often they were farmers, herders like the Zulu were, young kids like Anton, Franche, and Ashley Creel. Ashley Creel was 13 when he mobilized against the apartheid government. Do you know what I'm saying? So let's look at another group of people from my beautiful, brave country that have produced some of the bravest men in the world. These were the Boere, also farmers. Their name literally means the Boere. I mean, farmers, right? And they were up against the most powerful army in the world that also sought to erase their language. They were the first people for whom concentration camps were invented by the British on South African soil. Concentration camps were invented for white Afrikaans-speaking South Africans. And I want to tell you about a moment where they wanted to run away in fear and what drove them back. The same thing that made Macbeth grieve. Please listen. And I'm going to encourage you, when you listen to South African history, please don't listen to it from your own sources or from non-South African sources. It lacks the beauty and the nuance and so on and so forth. There is nobody like us that tells our history. So please always go out of your way to listen to South African voices on South African history, although you are all welcome here today, and I will be showing you other things. But please listen to this.
Thornycroft to the fact that his men are surrendering. And Alec Thornycroft moved into that trenched area up there, and he screamed at his men on the top of his voice, "There'll be no surrender here." He says, "I'm in charge." And pointing across to the Boer side, he screams, "And you, sir, can take your men to hell." He's talking to General Prinsloo of the Boers. And no one describes this better than Deneys Reitz, who wrote the book Commando, a young 17-year-old Afrikaner boy who'd had an excellent education, wrote his book in English, and he tells us that as he made his way up into this battle, every one of his tent mates had been shot and killed and was lying dead on the side of the mountain. And they believed that the Boers were bearing the brunt of the battle. And with that huge man screaming his head off up there, these Boers in this position decided the best thing to do was to get out of it. Not all of them, but the majority started to leave. And that is when Louis Botha got on his horse. He rode out after his men, and after he gathered them together, in probably the most impassioned plea of his career, he says to the men, "Do you know who you're fighting?" He says, "The men you're fighting have come 7,000 miles. He says, "They're fighting for a queen." He says, "You're fighting for your homes, your farms, your families." He says, "You're fighting for your country." And he reminds them of their victory on Majuba in 1881. And that was enough to bring the Boers back into the battle. And back into the battle.
So as the men were riding out, General Louis Botha says to them, "These men are fighting for a queen, but you are fighting for your homes, your farms, your families. You're fighting for your country." And so what this indicates to us is that people are driven by a why. why. You know, the why is more important than the what. Let me just check the timing because there's so much more I could say. I could say thousands of things more. Nope, the timing indicates to me that if you're still here, I should probably end it here. But guys, just because I've spoken about war doesn't mean that war is the only thing that, you know, men are made for. There is also a senselessness to it. This is Nuance with Nikki, the nitty gritty, even if it's shitty. So we have to talk about each nuance that we can squeeze into one video. It's so hard. But I hope that, I don't know if this audio is going to work, but do try and listen to this poem, okay? Dulce et Decorum Est. Dulce et Decorum Est. I'm so sorry, my Latin is lacking. But it speaks of the senselessness of war too. All right? Gents, as I show you this poem, I hope one image stays in your mind, and that is this. Look at this little boy in one of the world wars, I believe. A German boy, just having wet himself. I do believe that in war, though they may not show it, this is how many men feel. And it's okay to be scared, you know, but I'm going to show you an animation of a more realistic, unglamorized sense of war, so that you understand that I'm not glorifying it. I just think sometimes people are put into impossible circumstances.
Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge. Till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot, all went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy a fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie. Dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori.
Alright, just in case I get copyrighted, let me go and read just the last bit, right, of the poem. And so a soldier says, if in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile, incurable sores of innocent tongues. Okay, so if your language is not English, he's just saying if you could see what we saw in war, all of the sores and wounds, etc., right? He's saying, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, Dulce et decorum pro patria mori. So he's saying the old lie. You wouldn't tell children the old lie that it is great and honorable to die for your country. Okay, I just wanted to say that as a counterbalance to what I said before. I know that people are set into impossible circumstances, but I don't want to be responsible for only glorifying war. Men who have been in it, do not do that. Real warriors, do not do that. They take it extremely seriously. What comes to mind now that I'm not going to show is the SS Mendi, a South African ship, which as it sunk, the men ran down singing. So if that piques your interest, I do recommend you go and listen to that. But moving on from South Africa, nope, fate has said we shall not move on from South Africa. There is space for more South African warriors.
African kingdom that we are going to look at is the Pedi Kingdom. The Pedi Kingdom is located in Sekhukhune land. Sekhukhune land is found in the northeastern part of the old Transvaal or the ZA.
Just so you're clear, this is a lesson that I've teached to grade 8s, and so I've used this video before.
The last independent king of the Bapedi Kingdom, Sekhukhune. Sekhukhune was a very successful king for the Bapedis and was feared among many people. The Boers tried to take over the Pedi Kingdom 3 times and failed 3 times. And after that, the British tried to take over the Pedi Kingdom.
Sorry, let me just move my face away from the king's face. There we go, so that you can focus on him instead. Moving swiftly forward.
And fought 3 battles against them. 3 times they failed, and the 4th time only they succeeded with the help of 10,000 Swazis as allies. After this battle, Sekhukhune was jailed in Pretoria. This marked the end of the Bapedi Kingdom, or their independence rather. A couple of years...
Note here, many people fetishize the idea of being an African king. The Swazis are from a different nation, part of our region, and they had to be allies in order to defeat him. This man showed that a knockdown is not a knockout. He got up 3 times as a king, and then was even jailed for his kingdom. Alright, so that is the integrity of the men in my country.
The end of the Bapedi Kingdom, or their independence rather. A couple of years after the defeat of the Bapedis, King Sekhukhune was taken back to his defeated kingdom. He was then murdered by his half-brother, who claimed to be the lawful king of the kingdom. I would like to share what the London Times wrote in response to his murder. We hear this morning from Durban of the death of one of the bravest of our former enemies, the chief Sekhukhune. The news carries us back to the time when the name Sekhukhune was the name of dread, first to the Dutch and then to the English colonialists of Transvaal and Natal.
Right, and so King Sekhukhune had gained the respect of his enemies, gained the respect of those who would invade his kingdom. We hear this morning from Durban of the death of one of the bravest of one of our former enemies, the chief Sekhukhune. The news carries us back to the time when the name Sekhukhune was a name of dread, the first to the Dutch and to the English colonialists of the Transvaal and of Natal, which at that point were 2 different kingdoms. This is not the first, nor will it be the last time this happened in South Africa. We spoke earlier about the Anglo-Boer War, sometimes named the South African War. You know, on one of those hills stood 3 men, and had a bullet gone stray, the history of the world would have changed, because on that hill stood General Jan Smuts, stood Mahatma Mohandas Gandhi, and stood Winston Churchill. And for better or worse, had a bullet gone astray, the course of world history would have changed. Mahatma Gandhi there with the Naidu family created a thing called Satyagraha, peaceful resistance. They overwhelmed the prison system here in South Africa to such an extent, with not even picking up any arms, that as part of the British colony, news had to be sent north to London, and as such, Indians across the Indian diaspora were set free because of our South African Indians, brave men and women in that instance, who used passive resistance. So that's just another story of bravery for my country.
They talk about the Dutch, that refers to the Voortrekkers or the Boers. They use these terms interchangeably. Let's look at where the Pedi Kingdom is today.
Of course, this is a...
The third African kingdom that we are going to look at is the Zulu kingdom. The Zulu kingdom was very well known, even beyond the borders of South Africa. People like Shaka Zulu, who made name for himself with his military conquests and vast army. Britain wanted to take control over Zululand, and they invaded Zululand in 1879. They thought it's going to be a quick and decisive battle, but they were wrong. The first major clash between the British and the Zulus was at the Battle of Iswandala, which was a major victory for the Zulus. The Zulus, being inferior in terms of their weapon technology, completely overwhelmed the British. With such a defeat, the British hit back with a strong force and defeated the Zulus at the Battle of Ulundi a couple months later. The king at that time, King Cetshwayo, he was the last independent king of the Zulus, and he was taken to Cape Town and imprisoned there, and then afterwards taken to London.
Another king that went to jail. You saw him earlier in the movie. As I understand it, they had to outnumber those Zulus 5-1. They had to take forces from all over the British colonies, because conventional wisdom says you have to outnumber an invading army has to outnumber a defending army 3-1, and they assumed that because of inferior weaponry that they would win, and they were much mistaken. So moving forward now, let's finally get to my favorite piece of advice for men. This is Polonius speaking to his son Laertes in the Shakespeare play Hamlet, and I've made my kids learn this off by heart. This is as Laertes.
Yet here, Laertes. Aboard, aboard, for shame. The wind sits in the shoulder of your sail, and you are stayed for. There, my blessing with thee. And these few precepts in thy memory see thou character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means...
So, I just need to pause this so I can take my face away. This is when Laertes is basically going out to learn how to be a man. And so just try and capture the words. I think I won't actually translate these for you just as a matter of time. Listen to them. You can find a translation for yourself. I would recommend learning it off by heart. Shakespeare is most powerful when you learn it off by heart, because every time you listen to Shakespeare, you understand it more deeply. So the wind sits in the shoulder of your sail. You know, your journey as a man is about to begin. Okay? And so these are the last word Dad says to him as he goes out.
My blessing with thee. And these few precepts in thy memory see thou character. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unproportioned thought his act. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. Those friends thou hast, and their adoption, try grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel. But not dull thy palm with entertainment of each new-hatched, unfledged comrade. Beware of entrance to a quarrel, but being in, bear that the opposed may beware of thee. Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice. Take each man's censure, but reserve thy judgment. Costly thy habit as thy purse can buy, but not expressed in fancy. Rich, not gaudy, for the apparel oft proclaims the man. And they in France of the best rank and station are of a most select and generous chief in that. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and borrowing dulls the edge of husbandry. This, above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow, as the night the day, thou canst then not be false to any man. Farewell. My blessing season this in thee.
All right, so that is the unmatched Shakespeare. Okay, let me see. There is one line that if you understand no other, it says there, beware of entrance into a quarrel. Don't start a fight, boy, but being in, bear it that the opposed may beware of thee. It says, don't start a fight, but make sure you damn well finish it. I've heard many fathers say this to their sons. So to the fatherless boy, wherever you may be in the world, I hope that what I've shown you is that you are not alone and you have many fathers. They exist in literature, they exist in reality, and they exist in history. And the more you educate yourself, the more you can find these and more beautiful other things. These are simply the ones that have inspired me from my frame of reference. I hope this has been interesting to you. Let me know in the comments. Has it been helpful? Which stories have inspired you? Which ones do you know? Which ones didn't you know? Did I mischaracterize any of them? How do you find this? Please keep it respectful, boys. This is a place for healing, not for tearing each other down. There are enough spaces for that, okay? I've tried as a woman to respect you, and in that spirit, I ask that you respect each other. This has been Nuance with Nikki, the nitty gritty, even if it's shitty. This one was for my boys. Thank you so much for joining, and have a Merry Christmas.